Hello, and welcome to this episode of Smith's Got Talent, a podcast featuring students, faculty, and alumni of the University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business, discussing how they've helped solve actual business challenges and leveraged AI and other tools to bring innovative ideas to the market. I'm Kim DeGrosse, the Assistant Dean and Head of the Office of Career Services, the host of our program. In this episode, we will feature a team of graduate students studying supply chain management at the Robert H. Smith School of Business, who took third place in the Global Sustainability Supply Chain Student Competition and second place in the Americas region. They presented Project MapleGuard, a comprehensive solution aimed at tackling excess and obsolete inventory in the fresh produce industry. The team is supported by and advised by Professor of Supply Chain Management, Martin Dresner. The results were announced on December 20th, 2024, from a field of over 84 teams from 18 countries. Teams presented solutions to tackle global supply chain challenges. The competition is a UN-endorsed global competition for university and college students to develop cutting-edge sustainable supply chains that focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Representing the Green Guardian team from Smith was Emmanuel Etsu, Jaivarthan Eswarmurthy, Ahmad, Mohi Uddin, and Fiaz Ahmad, two of whom are with us today. We welcome now Professor Dresner. Martin Dresner has served on the faculty of the University of Maryland Robert H. Smith School of Business since 1988, where he is a professor in the logistics business and public policy department. He has two areas of research: air transport policy and supply chain management. Professionally, Dresner is chair of the Air Transport Research Society and is on the scientific and steering committee of the World Conference of Transportation Research Society. He also serves as the senior editor for the Journal of Business Logistics. Thank you all for joining me here today. Super exciting. Some really great accomplishments, right? So I'm going to start with you. And if you could just tell us a little bit about the project, introduce yourself, and tell us about how you guys got started, really.
All right. Thank you so much, Kim, for inviting us over here. It's a privilege to be here and talk about our solution. So we came here last year, and we started working on different, learning concepts about supply chain. Our class has started, and one of our seniors, his name is Emmanuel, who is the lead of our group. He reached out to us with an opportunity of this competition. He told us a little bit of the history that the last year we participated, and we were able to reach up to the first round, and then we couldn't move forward. But it was an amazing experience, and that is what he promised us, that whether we win it or not, we are going to have an amazing experience out of it. So I do remember we had our first meeting. We came to our OCS office, booked an office, and we started our conversations about that competition. But yeah, one thing that was very clear out of that room was we're going to win this. If we are into this, we are going to win this. Very clear agenda that we have set. Then we had our meeting with the professor. We talked about different opportunities of different case studies that were a part of the competition. And we told professor that we're going to go with the Dole Foods who are having those obsolete and excess inventory issues. So that is where it all started, got an opportunity, and a couple of meetings down the line, we found our solution.
Wonderful. First of all, tell us your name for the audience, just so they know who the voices that are talking.
My name is Fiaz Ahmad, and I'm a second-year supply chain management master's student at Smith School.
Okay, fantastic. So please introduce yourself, and then tell us a little bit about how you got the project started off the ground.
All right. Thank you so much, first of all, for having us here. My name is Ahmad or Ahmed, whatever feels natural to say. And yes, we are both in the same class. We started our degree last year at around the same time. And it was like first semester for us, and there was a lot going on. But Emmanuel was that kind of senior who was through Professor Humberto Carlos that we used to, network with initially, and then we had a kind of an understanding in which he used to guide us. So when that person came to us one day with this opportunity, we were really excited about it at the start. And as Fiaz mentioned, like in I still remember in our first meeting as a group, actually he was the one to say it, and he was like, "Guys, we're gonna win this. We're gonna win this." And eventually we did manage to do that. Um, I still remember that we were presented with 5 cases, which spanned from different areas of global supply chains. 3 of those were global, and 2 were focused locally in one of the regions. Uh, we chose this specific case study for Dole Foods because of the nature of the product. So the nature of the product was perishable food items. And being supply chain people, we knew for a fact that trying to minimize waste in terms of excess and obsolete inventory in perishable food items, that is a very big challenge, right? So we kind of saw an opportunity related to that challenge over there. And that was the approach that we set in our first meeting, that instead of coming up with a one-size-fits-all approach, giving one solution, we will dissect the whole supply chain for Dole Foods in segments, and we will try to come up with solutions which have the highest impact on those bottlenecks or on those stages of supply chain. So that was the whole approach that we took from day one.
So one of the features of these case studies is that you always have imperfect information or not enough information. So I was wondering how you used the information that was available to you and how you went about trying to infer some of the other missing information so that you could come up with a solution to the case.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and that was, again, one of the biggest challenges. Again, the approach was same, to look at the whole supply chain from end to end, segment the supply chain, because also like it's a global supply chain, right? So there's not one single mode of transport that is involved for Dole Foods. So we segmented the whole supply chain in that terms, and we started looking at waste first. So that was one of our first solutions, which is upcycling of the waste. So we dedicated one person to research as much as they could on that. Again, there was a huge asymmetry of information involved. And when you're dealing with one specific company, a lot of their data may not be disclosed. So we had to navigate across those challenges. So one big part was at the start of the first couple of weeks, we did a lot of research, not in terms of only Dole packaged foods, but in terms of the systems that they had. And then we focused on the product itself, like what kind of packaging materials are being used there, what kind of technologies are available for road transport, for air transport. And then we chose the solution which could deliver the highest impact.
How did you go about divvying up the all the roles that you have and all the issues that you have in terms of this case study? How do you decide who did what?
So as Ahmad was mentioning, dissecting the whole supply chain was as important as it can be. Why? Because this is a perishable product, right? And there's a lot of challenges managing a perishable product, starting from upstream till the downstream, right? So we started looking from the upstream, right? Who are their suppliers? How many plants do they have? How many banana plants do they have in the South America and everywhere? Because they're producing that product over there and taking that to America through multiple model system, right? So they have the trucking mod, they have the sea mod by air, everything is being involved. So we started looking at those fronts wherever they are having some waste, like damages. They were having 2 to 3% obsolete and excess inventory because there was a lot of waste involved during those modal transportations. So we started looking at that, and we found multiple issues like with the packaging they are using, considering the sustainable side of it, of the UN SDG goals. And we started working on the tech. One of our technical solutions was about how they can reduce the damages in the containers to give them more momentum on the fluctuations that they have on the sea. And moving forward to the downstream side of it, on the trucking side, because most of that happens on the trucks in US, to their downstream side. So we found another solution in that set. So it was like we started dissecting that process, and we eventually found those key solutions that were the perfect for that aspect of the supply chain. So we were very clear from the start that there cannot be only one solution that fits everything.
Now, I know there were multiple rounds of this case study, and you would get feedback after the first round. I was wondering, what sort of feedback did you get, and how did you handle that feedback?
I do remember we submitted in the first round. You have to submit a PR FAQ document. So it's associated with an Amazon. So it's a press release FAQ document that you have to submit as part of the solution to the problem. We did that, and we got an amazing feedback that there are some of the revenue connectivity that you guys are missing. How does your solution on the financial side impact this business, in how much number, how many millions of numbers? So that was an amazing feedback that we got from in our first phase. In the second phase, we made sure that we segmented our products as part of our solution, and which states are we going to launch that product, how much revenue are we going to bring in based on the target of the share capturing that we have for our kombucha and the other brands that we talked about in the solution. So that is where it helped us to have an experience of the research that we have to do about that category in that segment market.
Yeah, and that was the feedback, kind of like the constructive feedback that we got. One positive thing that came out of that paper was that the judges actually mentioned that our solution was very in detail and in very depth. Usually when you're trying to implement a solution, the best part, the best idea or the best solution, what this is what we talked about too, Fiaz. The solution has to be simple in a way that it can be one thing, it can be implemented practically. And number two, it should make sense financially. So that was kind of the feedback that we got from our PR FAQ report. And that is what we focused more on while we were going into our final presentation.
Now, the final presentation was an oral presentation over a video to a set of judges. And how long did you have for that presentation?
I think it was 15 minutes in total.
Now, 15 minutes is not much time to make a presentation. So how did you convey everything you wanted to convey in 15 minutes?
Okay, yeah. This is a question that is very close to my heart in a way that I always say anybody can have an idea. Anybody can have a brilliant idea, but unless they know how to convey that idea, communicate it especially when in a competition like this where you have a time limit, right? So yes, first of all, we did practice a lot. We practiced with each other. We gave each other, again, as Fiaz said, we gave each other feedbacks, and we tried to time ourselves. And the biggest part was that, again, because we chose such a kind of case study which was very complicated, and we actually got this feedback in Geneva while they announced our name for this for our award. They actually said that in their announcement that this was one of the most challenging case study, and that was why a very little, like I think it was 2 or 3 teams out of the whole 84 teams which actually did this case study, and we managed to win based on that. Our solution was multifaceted, and that was the biggest challenge that we had, how to convey that. Naturally, because we've done certain kind of such kind of competitions back in our undergrad as well, so we had something to build on. And there are always people in the group who have different kinds of strengths, right? So we try to play by our strengths. Again, my strength would be, which I'd like to tell, is that I like to present. I like to talk about an idea, and I try to take it as a sales pitch, right? Fiaz has a lot of strengths, but one of the key strengths that he showed was the financial aspect of things, right? So he knew his numbers, and he knew which numbers to talk about and which numbers to put on that slide. So we were very strategic about that in terms of cost saving, in terms of ROI, in terms of the payback period, in terms of how many years will this pilot project take, and stuff like that. So yes, that was a big challenge, and I think one thing that helped us at the end of the day was practice.
So if you could sort of summarize, in a few words, what makes a good presentation? I mean, how if you were to watch 5 presentations, how would you choose the best one?
The best presentation is the one that delivers a story, that tells a story, You have to firstly know your audience. You have to do some homework on that. You have to know, okay, if I have an panel of expert judges from all over the world, we actually saw what kind of industry they are from, what are their strengths, what kind of careers that they've had, and LinkedIn helped us in that regard. And then the presentation itself was, we had to tell a story again. So that's where the whole titles came into the picture. And we started off with an executive summary. So we knew for a fact that these judges have been listening to all these presentations, and we are not like the first group that is going in with the dole packaged foods. So they probably have some context, right? So in our executive summary, instead of focusing on what was required in the case study, we assumed that they know. We came up with what our solutions are targeting in that whole document. So once we laid out that foundation in front of them, then we took a very structured approach to telling the solutions that those problems had. So that was the kind of thing I think a good presentation delivers.
What a fabulous answer. I mean, I do research papers with my doctoral students, and the one thing I tell them is, this is a story. You've got to write and tell a story. And I think that it's the exact same with these case studies, in that you really need to tell a story that's going to be something that the judges are going to find interesting and something that they'd want to implement.
Absolutely.
So
Exactly. We definitely focused on these 2 to 3 factors: tell the story, research properly, and talk in numbers, because they are here to listen to those numbers, and numbers do matter. How much benefit or how much value are we adding into their business through our solution? So that has eventually helped us to make a better presentation.
Yes, and add to that, there is something that we talk about in our sustainability class, which is the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit. Profit being the most important, because no sustainability project can be done if the company is not profitable as a result of that project, right? So that's where numbers are very important. We have to first tell, okay, this is the solution which looks very good on paper. It's good for the planet. It's good for the people. But if we are losing money on that, that is not sustainable itself. We are saying this is a sustainable solution, but the solution itself is not sustainable. So yeah, the number part of things is, being in a business school, being in the supply chain environment, numbers matter a lot. And that was one of the key areas that we focused on.
I'm curious, you're the numbers guy here, so I'm told. The solution that you came up with, what do you think the financial impact would be on the business or the businesses that would implement the solutions that you recommended? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that actual solution and how the numbers would bear out.
Yeah, sure. So our solution, as part of our supply chain solutions package, was categorized into 2 categories. One was the technical solution side of it. One was the strategic solution side of it. So the technical solution side of it, I'll talk more in numbers, because we could do the research and get the numbers from there. So technical solutions had 3 different solutions. One was regarding a circular economical waste management product that we wanted to launch in the USA, in only one of the states, because again, to come up with some numbers, you have to do your sample sizing right. And that was only one state we started to do it. So we found that there is a growing market in US for kombucha tea and energy bars. So kombucha tea is something that you can ferment with fruits that are not edible directly, right? So you can use those fruits in those obsolete inventory, and you can use them, ferment them, and come up with a product that you can sell at a higher price than the fruit in the market. And there's a growing market for that. So we started researching. We found that the kombucha market within the next 5 years is going to be around 50 to 60 million in the US for just one state. And we set a target that out of that, we are going to come up with only 10% that we want to capture in the next 5 years once we come up with the product. So we came up with that there is a potential of 10 million that we can grab out of that state for just the kombucha tea. And then we added up an assumption for the energy bars too, because again, every person, every young athlete, every young student wants some very easy to use energy bars before they go to the gym. Another solution that we had in our technical stream was the supply chain solutions that we want that will reduce the waste within their supply chain processes. So one of them was, again, we wanted to come up with very simple solutions that are very easy to implement. So as you must know that in the trucking industry, even in the sea industry, palletization model is being used a lot because it's easy to, move those pallets. Your offloading and loading time is considerably reduced from the dead pile loading, right? So on those pallets, we wanted to introduce small rubber pallets under those pallets that will reduce the impact of the damage when that vessel shuffles. That will actually reduce. So we found research, we found two key partners. One was PepsiCo and one was, I think, Unilever, who has already implemented that and does not have those solutions. So we came up with durable solutions, durable materials that they can use as palletization. But again, as you must know that the reverse supply chain of those pallets can be a challenge because they're not the universal pallets that they can use. So we came up with a third party that is already managing those two key players in the market, so they can partner up with them and they can manage the reverse supply chain of that. We came up with the numbers, how much they can save and how much they have to implement on that solution, and that was almost nothing.
And yeah, to add to that, Fiaz mentioned the sorbitane PSA material that we used to stabilize those pallets and to essentially reduce the waste that is there due to vibrational effects during transport and logistics, right? Just to give you an example on the financial aspects of things, to implement that simple kind of looking solution, we had to look from different angles. What happens when we introduce those rubber pieces that we are putting beneath those pallets? One, they take up more space. So we had to, calculate what kind of difference would that create in our load capacity, right? So we had those calculations over there. Another thing that could happen was, again, the loading and unloading processes could be affected by essentially a new pallet design, right? So we factored in that information and did our analysis based on that as well. And while segmenting, coming up with those numbers, taking assumptions which made sense and having data to back those assumptions up, that is all numbers. And that is what we focused on. And again, as we were discussing before, at the end of the day, you should know what to present, what is important, what is not important to put up on that slide.
Boy, I love that kombucha solution. When I think of old bananas, I think of maybe smoothies or banana bread, but kombucha, that's great.
Exactly. And I would like to, another exciting part of that solution that was the closest to my heart, I did most of the research on that, was coming up when in the packaging domain, they were using polythene packaging to pack their bananas in the final corrugate boxes, right, in the South America. So as per their sustainability goals, by 2025, they wanted to eradicate any polythene petroleum-related packaging from their supply chain. So we came up with a solution that they have their plants in which bananas are being grown up. And what do they do with once those harvesting is done, right? For the trees, for the plants that they're using. So we came up from research that they're using them to fertilize the soil again. But the banana leaves are being used at a lot of places in the world as packaging too already. People are using to put stuff on the banana leaves, but they're just wasting that packaging. So we came up with a solution and we did research and we found a university based in America, I think it was Wisconsin, that there was a research already happened that banana leaves can be processed and can be used as packaging, and they have better permeability properties for the VPR. VPR is vapor transfer rate that actually gives more shelf life to the fruits. So they can use that packaging with a better shelf life, and that's even cost-friendly. So who's going to process those banana leaves now? That's the biggest challenge considering a supply chain perspective, right? So we came up with that they have 2 corrugate suppliers from which they get packaging, and they're local. So they can use the same supply chain network that they already have established. We don't have to come up with a new one, right? Every new network requires more carbon emissions, and we don't want to do that. So they can send those banana leaves to the same manufacturer who can process that packaging and send them the packaging, and they don't have to use the polythene packaging. So we came up, one part of our solution was that.
Very clever.
All right, pretty extraordinary, really. I mean, it's fascinating to hear you talk about how you came up with the solutions, the research you did, how you had to think on your feet, the collaboration that came out of this, and the actual business impact that your solution could have. Absolutely extraordinary. This season, during each episode, we'll have a segment featuring the esteemed AI expert and director of the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Business at the Smith School, Balaji Padmanabhan, that highlights the role of AI on the topics discussed.
So last week I was at an event in DC organized by the Capital Area Food Bank where they presented their annual hunger report. It was eye-opening and depressing as well to see and hear about how many of our neighbors in the Washington, D.C. area are food insecure. We're very fortunate to have our students at the University of Maryland work with Capital Area Food Bank on an AI case competition where they actually built solutions to show how AI can be used to help with food insecurity. Students came up with brilliant ways in which AI can be used to talk to people who need food in a very compassionate way so that they can direct them to places where they can get the food they need. They also showed how AI chatbots can talk to people who supply food to the food bank so that the food bank doesn't have to staff their call help desk with people that they simply don't have today to work in those roles. So it's not just a question of saving cost on the labor side, but when AI does this to people who are supplying food, it potentially can get more food in to the supply chain process for food insecurity so that more people will have access and reduce food insecurity. What you heard from the students, though, in this episode was not exactly that. They were taking an even larger problem, looking at the entire food ecosystem and looking at food waste and how, as food makes its way from origin to eventually how it gets consumed, there are so many pieces and parts along the way where intelligent solutions can come in that reduce this problem somewhat. Now, where does AI come in? Before we talk about that, I think this is a great example to think of where humans come in. There's a lot of conversation today about what humans should do in an AI world. And this case is a brilliant example for us to actually understand some areas where humans tend to dominate. The way the students broke the problem into pieces and structured their thinking around individual components. For instance, what happens in the supply chain process? What happens when food gets put in crates and shipped? What happens when you cannot protect food? It's just getting ready to end its useful life, but there might be ways to make kombucha out of it, right? So these are areas where they spent a lot of time understanding the ecosystem around food and bringing deep domain knowledge to plan an intelligent solution. This is where humans excel, and this is where today's AI is simply not there yet. Does it mean AI cannot help? Absolutely not. If you look at modern supply chains, a lot of firms are turning to AI to help manage their supply chains even better. There are firms that are willing to let AI take care of their inventory management, right? So if you are a retailer selling clothes and you have some clothes that are very popular, right? Instead of having humans spend their time to identify that, AI that's monitoring your sales can very quickly learn this and place orders so that the right products come to the right places at the right time. This has been happening for the last few years. It will only accelerate even more. Will AI do the kinds of things the students did? Take a problem, break it into pieces, and solve it? Modern agentic AI is trying to do this. If you hear the big AI vendors talk about AI agents and what these things can do, they stress capabilities like planning, breaking a problem into pieces, and then attacking each piece separately. This is where agentic AI is trying to go. Is it there yet? It's absolutely not there yet. If you talk to firms who are experimenting with this, it's good, but it's still not as good as the best humans. Where will this take us in the future? It's going to take us to a world where I feel humans will have to play to our strengths, which is building deep domain knowledge and learning to treat these AI agents as friends and colleagues.
Welcome back to the second part of our supply chain segment. And today, now we're joined by Professor Humberto Coronado, who joined the students in Geneva. He has over 15 years of industry experience in logistics and supply chain management. He's currently the academic director for the MS in Supply Chain Management program at the Robert H. Smith School of Business, where he also teaches business and supply chain management graduate level courses. Humberto earned a bachelor's degree in business from the Universidad Autónoma, a Master of Professional Studies in Supply Chain Management from the Pennsylvania State University, and an MBA in Accounting and Finance from the Robert H. Smith School of Business. He holds the Certified Supply Chain Professional certification. And we're so glad that you could join us here for the second half of the program today. You actually got the chance to go to Geneva with these students. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. It was a great experience. I was lucky to be the faculty responsible for bringing the students. It was an amazing experience of learning, networking, expanding the horizons, and seeing a different world, seeing all these professionals in the freight forwarding industry, learning about the way they do actual business. So it was a hands-on experience full of new connections, new learnings. It was wonderful.
Well, I know you were here to listen to the first half of the segment, and you probably had some additional questions for the students. You wanted to dig down a little bit based on your experience in Geneva.
Absolutely. So guys, when I went with you to Geneva, one thing that I noticed was perfect harmony. I saw a team that was very cohesive, and you know, in the most cohesive teams, there are always hiccups. And I wonder if you ever encounter during your collaboration in the project, if you encounter any types of hiccups with your team members and how you navigated these dynamics while you were putting together.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, having 4 different people in a team, 2 of those were the seniors in supply chain, we were juniors. We had a lot of conflicting schedules. All 4 of us were working part-time as well as studying for our degree. So I think the first big challenge or hiccup was trying to find that time, managing our time to put this, obviously we all have our own personal priorities as well, but making this a priority in a way that is, catering for all members of the team. So that was one of the biggest hiccup that we had to navigate. We did have, I would say, enough time to do all of that, but that is where the commitment comes in. So I still remember when we got together for the first time, when we made this team, one thing that we were all clear on was the commitment part of it. And that's where that whole idea of, guys, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it with the intention of winning it, right? So having that kind of mindset in all of team members individually helped us to, manage that kind of challenge that we were facing early on.
Other than that, I think one key thing that I remember about the cohesiveness about our team and the hiccups part too, that we never shied away from the fact that we need constructive feedback on everything that we're coming up with. So everyone was very vocal, even if it's something that they don't like. So they give you a very critical, constructive feedback. Hey, this is how you can improve it. Or this idea does not make sense. Why does it not make sense? These are the reasons because of my experience. And the other person was very vocal about why it makes sense too. So those constructive feedback conversations eventually led up to the best solutions that we think will work for that case study.
And along those lines, you mentioned that you had a great leader, and you mentioned Emmanuel. Emmanuel, great part of the team. So it is my understanding that you really liked working with him, and that you saw something. Emmanuel was part of the program too. He's a senior, right? He graduated. My question is, what made Emmanuel a good leader in this project? What were some skills that you see, or some specific traits that you see in Emmanuel, being a senior, second year student that was in the same program as you, right? Mm-hmm. What are those things that you saw in him that inspired you to move forward, and that made you follow him the way you did?
I do remember first time in my orientation, that was the first person I reached up to, and I started talking, because I reached out to like 5 to 6 people before even starting the school, and he was the first one to reply me back, congratulate me to get an admission in this school, and advise me that let's meet in the orientation. So he was the most welcoming personality that I felt when I joined the school, and he was the one who reached out to me with this opportunity. During the competition, the prep, the research, and everything we were doing, I never for a single day felt that he is a senior, I felt like he's actually there to learn from us. So the kind of revenue or market potential research that we did for the kombucha market, it was his responsibility, because as we told, we divided our responsibilities. But he reached out to him, to ask, hey, where do I start? I need to learn your perspective, how I can do my research better. What's your strategy? So that kind of inclusiveness coming from the lead of the team definitely made us feel that we are in the right team and we have a great lead.
Yes, definitely. And to add to that, I think he has this trait, which is, I think a good leader is a good leader because they are not, trying to tell you what to do, but they are trying to inspire you from their own actions. So first of all, he was putting in that effort from day one. It wasn't like, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. It was like a collaborative process from the very start. And the other thing about his personality is that he is very humble. When he talks about something, you don't know how much he has achieved personally in his life, in his academic or his short professional career that he just started last year. One thing that you get to know is when someone starts talking. And if they have that kind of humbleness when they're talking about some things, that shows you that this person is easy to talk to, is easy to discuss your problems with, instead of, feeling that, okay, what will he think about me if I ask this seemingly dumb question, right? So he always gave us that level of comfortability from the very start. And as Fiaz said, most of the times we felt like he is learning from us in a way that we were thinking we are learning from him. So it was kind of like a,
very symbiotic
kind of very good synergy from the very start.
So tell us a little bit about the trip itself. What was it like with so many different groups, and how did you help the students prepare, really?
Well, we had conversations before we got on a plane. We had several meetings leading to the trip. This was an international trip. And some of the things that we kept top of mind was we're always representing the school. No matter where we are, we're always wearing the big Terp shirt. So we needed to make sure that we were on the same page in terms of our behavior. All my students are well behaved, but when you bring all the students together and you bring them to celebrations and they may have a little bit of, I don't know, they get too excited, right? But they will always knew that they were representing the school. The experience was about 3 days, three days. And I'm going to ask you after this, but one of my main takeaways was it was a wonderful opportunity to continue the process of learning. It was 3 days of learning. It wasn't just about, we're going to go there. This is the award ceremony. It was a process of learning, a process of enjoying the reward because, third out of 84 teams, right? Enjoying the reward, but there was a lot of learning. They had an opportunity to go to a port. You had an opportunity to go to, what else?
World Trade Organization office. We went to the Port Authority, which is basically the biggest port in Switzerland. Apart from that, our third visit was to.
So
I'm kind of blinking on that.
yeah, so they divided us into a team of two. I was in the team with Ahmad, who went to the Geneva port. I don't exactly remember where the other team went to, but it was more like a port. I don't exactly remember the name. And the other part is the World Trade Center that we all went to. And they told us all of the challenges that they're facing within the whole European Union, interconnected ports on the supply chain. So the experience was very relevant to our major on the supply chain challenges globally and how they are linking those challenges up with the sustainability part.
That's fantastic. As we get ready to wrap up the session for today, you all are the seniors now, right? So you have the class coming below you. You're the older ones. What tips would you share now with first years who would be in that same position?
So obviously there are a lot of things that we can say on this, but to narrow it down to one of the things that is most important or close to my heart would be, and this is, I'm sorry I'm copy pasting this from your class. Do the work. Do the work. Do the work.
Okay.
I still remember from first day of our class.
Something stuck. Right.
So once once you are prepared for any kind of occasion, once you have done your part, after that, you have nothing to be afraid of, right? Or at least think like that in your mind. You can, maybe in some situations, you did not think about certain aspect of things. But once you're prepared on all of the rest things, you can be very genuine and say, yeah, I did not think about that, but I've done this. And because of this perspective, I think what I'm talking about is correct, or it's reliable or suitable to whatever situation there is. So I would say do the work.
Love it. Love it.
One thing I would like to add on that, to get out of your comfort zone is the first thing that you have to do when you are out here. And that goes for being a part of global supply chain competitions, that goes for applying to those jobs that you don't even consider yourself, eligible for. So you have to do everything that you can do, make yourself put in those situations, because you come out of that stronger. So you have to do the homework. You have to make yourself, you put in enough effort that you're comfortable with yourself, right? And then you have that confidence in you that you're there. I've done everything that I could, and I'm gonna come out of that with a winning mindset. So I think that is what I would tell all of the students: get out of their comfort zone, do your best. Your time is very valuable, so choose the thing that you actually want to do and do it the right way.
Wow. Well, I have to say, Professor, our students are absolutely amazing. I'm just blown away by both of you. It's been incredible listening to your adventure, going off to Geneva, all the things you had to do with your project. We know that Smith students actually solve real business problems. And you guys have really shared an incredible example of the impact that you can have when you put your mind to it, right? So thank you all for joining us today. And until our next episode, we wish you well, right? And we know that Smith's got talent. Thank you all
so
for
much.
coming
Thank you for
today.
having us.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
us. Thank you.
Take care. To learn more about how to hire our students that can innovate in your business, please email us at smithocs-ae@umd.edu. Again, that's smithocs-ae@umd.edu.